Well, hello everybody. Paul Cestnick here. Well, yesterday was February 14th, so that would have been Valentine's Day. And as some of you might know, I have four sisters, no brothers. So a lot of feminine energy in my growing up in a family with all sisters. And one of them was telling me today about a lady she watches on YouTube who talks about relationships and things that women go through. So I actually watched the one episode, and she goes by the name of Little Poet on YouTube. So you can look her up on YouTube, Little Poet. And I happened to come across this episode, as I've titled this one, When He Doesn't Love You Back. And I thought that was a pretty interesting subject all on its own. So I'm going to dedicate this particular episode to this topic of when he doesn't love you back. Or we could also say the same thing when she doesn't love you back. Although generally I think it's more when he doesn't love you back. Because women come from the heart more. They come from their instinct, from their gut feelings about things. They come from a place of nurturing. And so in loving relationships, it's easy to give into a relationship, but maybe it can get to a point where you don't feel it's coming back. And at that point, it can become very frustrating. And Little Poet was talking about women who are in their 60s or 70s, or maybe even older than that, who end up going through divorce or separation after a whole lifetime. Maybe that was not what you thought it would be. And I thought I would add in my 2 cents, if you like, for you women or men watching, having to do with relationships. And I come at it from my perspective as a teacher and a student of A Course in Miracles, because that's the viewpoint that I come from. I'm going to explain to you the meaning of love as is presented from this book called A Course in Miracles, and see if it makes sense to you. If it does, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, because it's quite fascinating when we look at things such as love. And in relationships between couples, it's particularly profound as to the meaning of love, how it's played out in those relationships. So let's take a look at this quote out of A Course in Miracles. The holy instant is the Holy Spirit's most useful learning device for teaching you love's meaning. Now, let me say, first of all, the holy instant, I'll tell you what that is before we go on, okay, if you're not familiar with it. The holy instant is now. Without any reference to 5 minutes ago, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 years, 5 decades, no reference to that whatsoever. And no thought about the future of what you would like it to be. None of that. And this moment called now, you've probably heard about that. It's certainly mentioned in many books. But now really means now, which is a clean, clear, untouched moment that has no meaning to it because you haven't given it any meaning just yet. Now, by the way, is the only time that exists anywhere or ever. That means that each of us gives full meaning to now by taking a memory from the past and dragging it into this present untouched moment and thinking about it and giving it whatever meaning. So let's say you're in a romantic relationship and your significant other decides, I'm done, I'm leaving. So when you think back on that the next day or a few days later, and you think of that event when they decided to leave, what happened? Why don't they love me anymore? Could I have done anything different? What you're doing is you're taking those memories and bringing them into this clean and untouched moment and thinking about them again. And now you're giving meaning. You're using this precious untouched moment called now to rethink something that's already gone. So the Course in Miracles gets into this idea of special relationships. Now let's read a little bit further from this same quotation. The Holy Spirit, the Holy Instant rather, is the Holy Spirit's most useful learning device for teaching you love's meaning. For its purpose is to suspend judgment entirely. Judgment always rests on the past. For past experience is the basis on which you judge. Judgment becomes impossible without the past. For without it, you won't understand anything. You would make no attempt to judge because it would be quite apparent to you that you do not understand what anything means. You are afraid of this because you believe that without the ego, all would be chaos. Let I assure you that without the ego, all would be love. That last sentence, let's look at that again. Without the ego, all would be love. And the reason for that is it's the ego that looks back all the time and that judges and then tries to project that into the future. Well, that person's leaving me now, but I'm in love with them and they're not giving it back to me. I feel like I'm the only one putting anything into this relationship. But I love this person and I wish they would come back. So you've taken something from the past, dragged it into this moment, and are now wishing and hoping this person will come back into your life tomorrow, the next day, in the future. You see, you've gone from thinking about a past idea, this person walking out on you, and wishing and hoping they're going to come back in the future. You skipped right over this thing called now, totally unaware that now even exists. That's what the ego does. That is how the ego functions. It takes something from the past and projects it into the future to see it differently, perhaps, to want to change it or improve on it, whatever. Never realizing that now is really the only time in which you can do anything. So what the Course in Miracles is saying is this. Special relationships are always, always based on past. Always. I've often thought it would be a great idea for young couples, not married yet, just dating now. They're thinking of getting married a year or 2 or 3 down the road. I thought it would be great for them to decide before they get married, before they get pregnant, to take at least a year to practice this thing called the holy, H-O-L-Y, the holy instant. It's called holy, H-O-L-Y, because it's not defiled. It's had no meaning. It's untouched by our thinking and our emotions and the things that we think about all the time. It's clean and clear. So it's holy. It's untouched. To practice the holy instant, if a couple could practice the holy instant for a year before they get pregnant, the child coming in to the relationship, not yet born, will now inherit a genetic hand-me-down from the mother and the father that's very different than what it would have been a year ago. Because a year ago, when you're born into this world, you inherit the genetic hand-me-downs of your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and so on, going back in the history of your lineage. But if you can practice living in the moment with your marriage partner-to-be or your marriage partner, over a period of a year, you retrain your subconscious mind to think differently. That changes the DNA. So that if you then get pregnant, that new child coming in is not picking up all of the junk DNA from your heritage. It's been changed by you and your partner into something quite new and something quite beautiful. It's okay to hold on to genetic hand-me-downs that are positive and loving and useful. But the negative ones that maybe belong to your mother, your grandfather, your parents, great-grandparents, that baggage is theirs. That's not yours. But you've inherited it. You inherit their genetic tendencies towards this attitude, towards that attitude. You want to keep the positive, loving ones, and you want to let go of the other ones. And you do that by retraining your subconscious mind so that a year down the road, your genetics have really changed dramatically. And then that becomes the hand-me-down that you hand down to your children. What a beautiful idea. And even so, let's say you don't do that. You're married, you've had children, you're now at your later years. You can still change your genetics. You can still change you on the inside so that your relationship with your significant other is different. But it takes, ideally, both people to want to do this. Having taught A Course in Miracles in small groups for 35 years now, I have seen over the decades where one spouse would come out, learn about A Course in Miracles, how it's going to change their whole life and their relationships. And even if they want to do that, their significant other, their spouse who is home, is not interested. So the person coming out to the meetings changes. They start practicing the holy instant. That would mean when they go at home at night, they no longer judge their spouse anymore. They start seeing their spouse through eyes of unconditional love, even though that spouse might be treating them badly. They start seeing them differently. That can either help to improve things or actually make things worse. Because if you're showing unconditional love to your spouse, happy to see them, not digging into the past, not complaining about something they said yesterday or about something that they're not doing that you wish they would, you stop doing that and you love them in the moment for what they are, exactly like they are, and you're accepting them fully. That may be difficult for your spouse to accept because you're a different person now. You would automatically be more loving, more accepting, more allowing, and they wouldn't know what to do with that. Quite often in abusive relationships, the spouse who is abusive, if the spouse who is waking up spiritually, living in the moment, not living in the past all the time, living in the moment, loving the other person unconditionally, the other person who has been the troublemaker doesn't know what to do with that new you. They may try to pull you down by saying nasty things, trying to tell you you're terrible, that those course meetings you go to are stupid, you're wasting your time, it's doing nothing. And they try to pull you down to the level they are at. That's very common to see that. Quite often, that would mean that if there is a divorce in the works, if there is a separation the two of you have been talking about, and if you're growing spiritually by leaps and bounds, you may not want to put up with that too much longer. The idea of somebody putting you down all the time. You may not want to put up with that. And so you may be looking for ways of bringing that to an end. And of course, there are other cases where the other spouse says, wow, you've really changed a lot. What's going on? You're not yelling at me anymore. We seem to be getting along better. What is this Course in Miracles group that you've been going to? And they may, in fact, get on board with that too. And then both of you are practicing together, living in the holy instant. It is a game changer. It is a life-changing experience. So when I was watching this video by a little poet, and I could see the struggle she was going through, and many people go through that too, really struggling in relationships. Relationships are where our lessons are. Now, dear little poet, she did make a mention of thinking back maybe over a relationship she had and regretting that she ever married that person in the first place. Well, let me comment on that. Every relationship you have, there are lessons to be learned by being in that relationship. If you were finished learning those lessons, you wouldn't be in that relationship. You might be into a different one, which would have different lessons. The idea here is be grateful, absolutely be grateful for every relationship you have ever had, because those relationships have given you opportunities to forgive and forget by overlooking the negative things you saw that person doing. Because each and every one of us is made in the image and likeness of the infinite creator. All of us. And when we get off on a pathway where we're causing problems for each other, we're forgetting who we really are. And then, in fact, we are offspring of God, infinite creator. And in that sense, we are perfect. We just happen to have gone off track, chose to be born into a family where we take on some genetic hardships. But remember this, before you were born into this life, you chose your parents. And at a mind level, pre-birth, pre-your birth, your parents agreed to be your parents in this lifetime. The soul knows the whole story. But once you get born into the physical and you're now a physical person, a little child growing up, we forget that we made these pre-life agreements, you see. And that makes it really difficult for us to then function in the world, and we wonder, why did I ever get into this relationship? Why did I ever get born into this family? I seem to be such a misfit. That was my case growing up. I felt like I was an outsider in somebody else's family. Some of you may have had that same feeling, like, was my body as a little baby switched in the hospital and I was given to the wrong family? No, you're in the right situation for the opportunities that it provides for you to heal your thinking and change the way you look at things. And those lessons are brought up right before you to experience, not for you to reject and not for you to hate the other person. No. Doesn't mean you should stay in a relationship that's really not good. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying the healing that comes place within your heart and your mind gives you clarity of insight. If you have learned whatever lessons you're going to learn from your spouse and you're done learning those lessons, it may be right for you to leave that relationship or stay in whatever feels right, because you will continue to learn. So when you leave a relationship, I would suggest the right way to look at it is to be thankful for the opportunities that relationship gave you to learn how to be a master of your own life. Not to control someone else. Never to control someone else. There's that old saying, a man marries a woman hoping she'll never change. He's thinking of her physical appearance generally. A woman marries a man hoping he will change, and she's going to be the one to help him do it. That's just male and female energies, right? The male energy trying to control the female energy, trying to teach, learn, to help a man become more of himself, a better person. And all of that works. But remember, you're not here to change someone else. That will be a real problem. And so in life, we might say, does life always have to struggle with these relationships? It does, until you learn the lessons. And as you do, you become higher and higher in your functioning, the frequency at which you function. When you get to the point when you just love people, whether it's yourself, your children, your spouse, neighbors, people at the store, you just love people. You are at a level of 500 on the map of consciousness. The map of consciousness goes from 20 to 1,000. In fact, let me bring it up here just to show it to you here. I always like to make reference here. If you're loving everybody, and life, you just love, you like to love, and you're up at a level of 500. See 500 there on that chart? If you're at a level of 540, you are at a level of unconditional love. At 540, you do not need somebody to love you. You don't need somebody to give love back to you. You are fully functioning, totally complete as a loving being. And you can give love all day long to everybody and never require it back. Look right beside that word 500, and it says love to the right of that. And to the right of that, there's a number 89. 89 is the level of happiness that you would have in your life overall, if you're functioning up there to the level of love. Let's say you're in a relationship and your spouse is angry a lot of the time. They're just angry. They're taking out on you. They're trying to be aggressive towards you. They're antagonistic. They might even be vengeful. They're down at a level of 150. They're actually functioning at a level of anti-life. That is the ego, lower ego mind. And they're functioning below 200. 200 is the tipping point between higher consciousness and lower consciousness. So, if you have a spouse and you can see they're functioning down there, you're not going to change them just by suggesting they become a nicer person. They have to want to do that. So the idea is for you to live your life in those higher areas. That's where you're functioning in higher levels of frequency. Literally, your body is frequency at a higher rate of functioning than if you were down in the lower aspects. If you ever drop into the lower aspects, say down at fear, 100 out of 1,000. It's frightening. It's anxious. You feel withdrawn from life. You're fearful of so many different things. Fear can show up literally in millions of ways. We can never even describe them all. If you're down there, you do not want to be there. The average person bounces up and down like a ping pong ball. They'll be down at that lower level of fear for something, and they say to themselves, I can't be afraid of this all the time. Like, this is ridiculous. I've got to get hold of my life and do something. Now they're up at a level of 200 where it's courage starting to appear. And now they start to work into those higher realms. Neutrality, where they're starting not to judge situations anymore. They're starting to let go of their judgments and their hatred and their anger and that kind of thing. And they move higher and higher. They become willing to be a better person. They start working at it. They start accepting other people. And they apply forgiveness. Forgiveness is the key to mastering this life. Forgiveness of everyone for everything, including yourself. You'll get up to that area of reasoning at 400. Brilliant, wise reasoning. It goes from 400 to 499. And from there you cross over into love. That's the whole idea then. When you're thinking of the relationships that you're involved with, your children, co-workers, spouses, you want to get to that point where you love them unconditionally. It's only the lower self that wants to push back. And the lower self is not really you. The lower self is what you've learned after coming into this world from other people. You'll learn from other people. From your siblings, from your parents, from your culture, from your religion. Everything you find experiencing in the world is how you begin to define yourself. The real you is way beyond any of that. It's beyond judging of others. But you chose to come here into the world for the adventure. We all have. If we're finished with the adventure, we've learned everything we can learn from being here, we'd be done here. We'd be coming back into other lives, other expressions, but at higher levels of functioning, not here on Mother Earth as it is today. We'd be coming back into higher versions of Earth. There are many versions of Earth. They look like this, but they're higher functioning in frequency. And so in this world today, you can see, just by looking at the news events or people you know, there are people who are low functioning and high functioning in terms of frequency of levels of consciousness. But as you transition out of this third density world and you become a master of your thoughts and your feelings, the next time around, you don't come back here. You move on of your own choosing to a higher frequency world. But you can't do that if you're a mismatch for that higher frequency world. Fourth density, there's no more war. People don't think that way. They look at each other as if we're all brothers and sisters. Why would you kill somebody? It's just ridiculous. That comes from a place of fear. You don't find fear in fourth density or higher densities than that. It's based on love, compassion, doing to help each other. That's the next step for Mother Earth. And I'll wrap up with this idea. Mother Earth right now is going through tremendous changes. Mother Earth is a soul. She is conscious. She's shifting out of third density herself into fourth density. All of our planetary systems, in all of our planets in our solar system, are all going through transitional change. And here we are, you, me, everyone, part of this. There has been no better time to be on this planet than you are right now. And even though there seems to be a lot of negativity, a lot of talk of war, a lot of politicians, you're wondering what they're thinking and saying, you're wondering who you can trust anymore, know that all of this is working out to our benefit. We're simply beginning to see things we had noticed before. That's the reason that we want to get hold of our own thoughts and our feelings and rise above the confusion of the world and look at it as an outsider observing it. And that begins with relationships. Every relationship comes with lessons. It's built in. It's the reason each of us has come here. So love the person that you're no longer married to. Don't be angry at them and think, oh, why did I ever marry them? Because of the lessons you were to learn. If you did not learn them and you're still angry at them, you will be back. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. You will keep coming back until we learn what we came here to learn. And as we learn those things, we rise in consciousness higher and higher and higher until we're no longer a match to even be here. We are more of a match for a higher frequency of functioning environment. And then that's what we do. We move on. So if you're interested in this kind of information, lots more could be said about special relationships, how they function, how as a couple you could engage in a program together to practice the holy instant. It is such a game changer. Probably 2 or 3 months after doing it, you won't recognize each other. You literally be different people. Do you know we all change from moment to moment to moment? A little bit here, a little bit there, as we change our view about things. But when you're practicing the holy instant, a major shift occurs because you're going to become less and less referencing the past. Unless it's some practical thing you look at, but you're not going to be referencing the past in terms of your spouse. Oh, remember when you said this to me 6 months ago? I haven't forgotten that. Well, when you practice the holy instant, you do not want to keep bringing those things up anymore. And you do that by recognizing that your spouse is this amazing divine being who's made in perfection, who's stuck just like you are, reliving the past. And when you begin to see that both of you are absolutely perfect in how you're created, you're still like that. You're just living a drama. And you want to stop playing that drama. You want to do it differently now. And as you do that, you begin to see that you begin to see the perfection in each other. Wow, what a change that is. So if you're interested in this kind of content, please subscribe, watch some of the other upcoming videos, and thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.